This is Lady Anne, owner of KPNL Radio and hostess of the Caravan Library of Lore, and I support Tessa. As an experiencer myself, I have filed my own reports with them, and the professionalism and heart they have shown my case goes above and beyond. If you have had an experience, I cannot recommend Tessa enough.
Hi, this is Ernie Hudson, Winston-Salem from Ghostbusters. I want to let you know that Ryan Stacy, he's created the Experiencer Support Association, TESA. You can check them out at www.tesacan.org. Now, they investigate paranormal, UFO, and provide support to experiencers. But you can check them out at, like I said, www.tesacan.org and see for yourself if they're really Ghostbusters. I can tell you this, they are a non-profit organization. Good luck, have fun, and keep it blessed.
Good evening. You are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association. Tessa is a UFO, paranormal, and Cryptid investigation association. We investigate everything belonging to the global phenomenon linked to highly strange and unexplained experiences. We also connect experiencers with other experiencers, creating a safe, positive environment to engage and discuss this phenomenon without judgment, criticism, or retribution. From the land of the white rolling sands, on the southeasterly tip of Georgian Bay, to all of you listening around the world, as we simulcast live on KPNL Radio, we salute you. If you want to go back and listen to our previous episodes, go to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell to be instantly notified when we are live, not only for these episodes, but every single element Tessa has to offer. On our website, tessacan.org, we have something for everyone. We have support for experiencers, data for independent researchers, and places to advertise for professional partners. This live portion of the show will run for about 45 minutes. We'll have a commercial break and then spend some time answering some of your questions in the comments. The show will continue immediately after on Patreon for our private members, so head over and become a member for the unclassified tier and receive additional content from this episode and so much more for only $7 a month. To all Patreon members, you are awesome, and thank you for helping us heal the world. All proceeds go back into the mission and will continue to help us create educational content for you and your family. Become a member today by going to patreon.com/the Experiencer Support Association. Also, if you're joining us live on Facebook or Twitter, head over to our youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association if you want comments read out in the chat. We're only answering questions on YouTube, so head on over, hit that subscribe button, and start chatting. If you can't stay for the entire show, don't worry. Every Monday, we will upload the audio file to our podcast network for you to take us on the go. Okay, you ready? Let's get started.
Hello, today is Thursday, February 25th, 2021, and I, Ryan Stacy, am not your host this evening. Tonight is a very special night, and I am joined with the maverick cryptozoologist, Alex Mistretta, and Alex will be interviewing our guest tonight. Our guest for Season 3, Episode 5 is Ed Brown. Ed is a seasoned researcher in the cryptid, paranormal, and ufology fields. He has personally visited such sites as Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, the Villisca Axe Murder House, and even the Amityville Horror House. Ed is the host of the popular YouTube show Sit Down with Ed Brown, where he has interviewed some of the top names in the world of Bigfoot. His passion started early as he couldn't resist the mystery surrounding the unknown, and he is a believer that every encounter or story is just one more piece of the puzzle that could be solved soon. So Ed and Alex, put on your tinfoil hat. We're about to go down a rabbit hole. How are you guys doing this evening?
I'm doing great. What about you, Ed?
Ed's on mute.
Appreciate you guys, the invite, man. Oh, that's a good start.
It's all good. You're here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the invite.
All right,
It's
Alex.
gonna be a lot of fun.
Perfect. So I'll let Alex take the lead here, and if you need me, I'll chime in or I'll interrupt. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. So for you guys that don't know, Ed and I go back a little bit. We're actually friends, like for real. You know, I have a small circle of investigators that I really trust, that I would always pull into whatever I'm doing, and Ed is one of those guys. So thanks, Ed, for being on with me.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite, and I appreciate what you just said. I feel the same way. Alex is a great guy, and we've already kind of done a few things together, and it's always interesting, man. Always interesting, you know.
Yeah, so like tonight, like, you know, we've been kind of teasing the show for a bit, and it's mostly we're gonna talk about the Amityville horror, because Ed has a source that no one's ever heard of before, that lived in town. One of his best friends was best friends of DeFeo Jr., who was actually the murderer of the original murder. And but before that, Ed's done so much things. Before we get to Amityville, I wanted to hit a few other topics with Ed, you know, because people that know Ed know him as the Bigfoot guy, but that's not all he does. He does a plethora of investigations and a plethora of subjects, and we became friends because of Bigfoot, because that's kind of our main thing. So I wanted to start a little bit with that. But first of all, I want people to get to know you. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions about yourself.
Sure.
What got you in all this to begin with? Why?
Wow, you know, it as the bio said, you know, it's that mystery of the unknown. You know, it's, you know, I think anybody with the desire or will to just kind of figure things out and do research and base opinions based on what you're finding as opposed to what people are telling you, you know, that's kind of what got me stuck in it. Even though I was young, you know, I remember I was first time I saw the Patty video, you know, the 1967 Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin video of Bigfoot walking through the creek. Man, I was hooked. You know, like, wow, this is crazy. This is great. You know, there really are monsters. And a few years later, I read the book Amityville Horror. It scared me to death. And then I saw the movie. It scared me even worse. You know, so you know, it's all these things together. You know, so I want to go to these sites and check places out and see it for myself, and you know, base my own opinions on what I see myself. You know? So it's a lot of fun.
What was your first interest though? Was Bigfoot your first thing, or just?
I would say Bigfoot's what got me going, but today I'm you're absolutely right. I jokingly say I'm trapped in that little Bigfoot box. You know, that's the only place anybody really knows me. You know, but which is fine. But my real passion is the paranormal. I love going ghost hunting. You know, it's just a lot of fun. You know, you never know, even if you don't get anything, it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I like about you, aside from your really cool like white beard, is that you're in this for the right reasons. You know, you have a genuine interest in all phenomena, but not only that, but you go out firsthand to check it out. You're not one of those YouTubers guys that just, you know, have a podcast or have a, you know, YouTube channel or whatever, and I've never actually gone out in the field, but have a lot of opinions. You know, you actually go out and do your own research, get your own sources, and that's what, you know, what I like about you, you know, so much. Right. So what's your favorite color?
Red, actually.
White, me too. What's your favorite animal?
White.
What? What's your favorite animal?
Bigfoot.
Oh, that's best answer ever. What's your favorite band?
Oh man, Queen rocks.
Queen. Oh,
Queen rock.
You don't know this, but I grew up around those guys. I used to go to Roger, the drummer's house, all the time as a kid. I knew Freddie was friends with my mom, so.
No kidding.
I knew these guys a little bit, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, we never talked about that, yeah.
No.
Well, speaking of bands, so, no, great band, I still remember when Freddie died. It was a tough time. But so speaking of bands, hypothetical questions. People can get to know you a little bit better. You're stuck in hell.
Right. My what?
And you have to listen to you're stuck in hell, and you have to listen to only Canadian bands. So do you go with Nickelback or Justin Bieber?
Nickelback.
Can I have
I would be
questioning?
Yeah, I would probably be first to listen to Justin Bieber, but I would rather listen to Nickelback.
Nickelback. All right. So, all right. Now let's get to some serious stuff.
How about Rush? How about that? How about Rush? You want to talk about Queen? How about Rush?
Rush.
I'm Canadian, by the way.
Are they Canadian? Really? I didn't even know that. Nice.
Yeah. Of course not. Carry on.
So Bigfoot. So before we get to Amityville, I want to touch on two different topics: Bigfoot and some of the Florida stuff that we've talked about. Obviously, together a lot.
Right.
So what's your favorite Bigfoot spot?
Southwest Oregon just has some really good territory. A lot of really credible sightings. I've been there myself. I've had some interesting stories, I guess you could say. I had a what we call a bluff charge. Literally dark. You're in the middle of the woods. You have nothing with you, no flashlight, nothing with you, and something comes running like a moose running through the woods. I mean, you hear limbs breaking, you hear all these things coming right at you. Then it just kind of stops, and there's nothing there. It's can't explain it, but it's a scary encounter, scary experience.
For people that don't not really familiar with it, can you explain what a bluff charge is?
Yeah, I mean, you hear dogs do that a lot. Dogs will run after you, run towards you if they're aggressive, and all they're doing is they're checking to see how you're going to react. If you turn and run, now you're prey. If you stand there and stand your ground, for the most part, they will just charge you and then stop. So that would be a bluff charge. Bulls do it, horses do it, most animals do it. But anything that runs towards you and then stops, it's considered a bluff charge. They're just seeing how you're going to react, and your reaction decides whether they're going to chase you or if they're going to, maybe I should be afraid of them instead. So that's what they do. But it's happened to me twice, actually. Once in Oregon, once in Washington, and the whole time, all you can do is stand there and just get ready to defend yourself because you can't see run. It just best thing that could happen is it stops, and that's what happened both times. Thank God.
For those that don't know, it's a very common thing that you hear when you're out in the field doing Bigfoot research. It happens to a lot of people. I've never had the experience. I've had other experiences, but not that one. It's also something really common in gorillas, for example. What they'll do is a territorial thing. If you get too close to their territory, they'll bluff charge, stop, and what you want to do is look down, because that's a sign of you being submissive. If you look at it in the eye, that's a sign of aggression, and bad things happen at that point. So
and don't show your teeth.
Don't show your teeth either. Don't go.
Never.
Yeah, it's not. So you want to be as submissive as possible.
Yep.
So is this the is this the spot you've been telling me about for the last few years that we've been talking about going to, or is this a different spot?
Yeah, I definitely want you to go up there with us. It's a really interesting location. It sits at, without giving the exact location away, I'll say it's pretty close to Mount McGoffin, which is in southern, pretty much south central Oregon. Beautiful country. I mean, you go out there and there's nothing for miles. Literally miles. And we had I'll tell you a quick experience that we had out there, which was really cool. And then some weird stuff about it. But we were out there. A friend of mine, Dan Lindholm, who's like my brother from another mother. I mean, I love the guy. Seriously, great guy. And he and I were out there. We spent 10 nights out there, and with pretty much nothing. you know. And one night, from about a mile away to about a 45-degree angle, if hypothetically, and I don't know which direction we were looking, but we were looking north, about 45 degrees, northwest. We heard this really loud, like really loud sound, and it was very aggressive. Then, from about the same distance, but about 45 degrees to the other side, northeast, we heard another one. And these two went back and forth and had like an argument for like 5 minutes. It was insane. And we're going, holy cow, we've got recorders out. We're going to pick this up. This is great. We're going to have, this is really good stuff. Got the recorders out the next day. Never caught it. Makes no sense. So we heard it as if we were, just plain as day, but nothing on the recorders. Makes no sense. It's just that I jokingly say it's that typical Bigfoot story. It happened. Can't prove it.
Yeah. Have you had a sighting though? Have you ever had a up close or a pretty good sighting?
I had a pretty good sighting. It was actually in Kentucky. I'd gone out there. I had heard about 7 different encounters, like within a 100-mile radius, and I kind of pinpointed the very center, and I went to that spot. And my brother and my sister-in-law and I went there, spent a couple days. Coincidentally, when we went, we ended up getting literally like 2 feet of snow. It was crazy. It was a mess. I'd gone out that morning by myself, and I noticed a trackway up behind the cabin we had rented, and I don't know what it was. I wanted to go up and take a look at it, see. It could have been deer, could have been a rabbit, could have been whatever. And so I was trying to make my way up there, and it was so deep of snow that I'm 6 to 240 pounds, healthy guy, go in the woods a lot, and I couldn't walk and stuff. I was literally crawling on my hands and knees up this hill trying to get up to see what this was. While I was doing that, I heard a very definitive, no question about it, solid piece of wood hit a solid piece of wood from a distance behind me. And I kind of froze, listening for it again, trying to pinpoint where it came from, but it didn't happen again. After about 30 seconds, I kind of rolled over, and I'm sitting in the snow, and I got my binoculars out, and I'm looking, and from probably a mile and a half away through my binoculars, I see a human-shaped figure just walking down the side of a mountain. No problem whatsoever. The same stuff I was crawling through, this thing was walking through with absolutely no problem whatsoever. I didn't see any details because it was just too far away, and the binoculars, it was still just real small. But I can tell you, whatever it was walking through the same conditions I was crawling through. It was walking with no problem whatsoever. It wasn't flailing its arms, trying to keep its balance. It was just head down, walking down the side of a mountain. So I can't prove that's what it was, but I sure think I did.
Yeah, it's a good point you brought up too, about not the arms flailing and all that, because you'll see a lot of these videos, people that capture Bigfoot footage, or I just was watching one today, one that was captured of the Almaty in Russia, which is the the Russian Bigfoot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When you see a lot of this stuff and the arms going around in the snow, usually it's a guy in a suit, because they're not accustomed to walking in that kind of environment.
Exactly.
And Ed brings up a really good point about crawling on his knees, because people don't realize how hard it is to get around when you're deep in the woods for us, right?
Yeah. When we go out to Oregon, man, where we go, there's like full trees on the ground. You got to literally climb over giant. If you see those trees in Oregon, those things are 5 feet in diameter. It's a climb, and you're walking through some crazy stuff, and we don't go where people are camping. We're going out in the middle of nowhere, and we had found one time in that area, by the way, we had taken a 10-mile hike around a big circle, right? During that time, and it's interesting because they lined up perfect, but we found 3 footprints on crossing where we had gone around. So where we had made the circle, something had walked right through the middle of it, and these were, remember the dimensions, because it was like the prints were like 14 3/4 inches long, I think 7 inches wide the ball. You know, I don't quote me, I think it was 5 inches wide at the heel. I mean, these were good size barefoot prints, you know, and I can't figure it out. It was interesting. We found 3 of them in different locations during our hike, but as if something had gone right through where we're walking in the big circle. So that was pretty cool. You know, that's a good hike.
So, like, moving on a little bit, so we're going to start moving towards some of the weirder aspect of the stuff that we do, you know? And then,
right.
So a few years ago, Ed gives me a phone call. He's like, I got this property in Florida that we can go to. It's like Skinwalker Ranch, but in Florida with Bigfoot sightings on top of that, you know? So tell me a little bit about Florida. What's going on there? What is it?
Wow, man, I'll tell you, I had gone there with some friends of mine before that, and we had some really crazy experiences. We were sitting out on this little path, and this property is like 40 acres, I believe. The people who own the property, just the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, kid you not, I love them to death. Would do anything in the world for them. And we had gone out into the woods there, and one experience we had, we were sitting there, and I heard it coming. You know, there was like a stick. You know, when a stick goes around, you hear this. You know what I mean? Huh? You hear that sound, and it's like coming like right at me, and I look over my head, and I didn't know what it was. I jumped up, went across the path over the else.
We lost the sound there for a second.
About that, but
you're good.
Am I good now? Okay. So the stick hits up in the tree and then falls right behind my seat. We were the only ones there. Everybody who was there was with us. You know what I mean? Nobody was like left back at the house or anything. Everybody who was there was with us. So there was no one to throw it. On our way out to that spot, there was a huge bushy area, you know, and man, something was like, really moving around in there. Like just and they had a rule, you know, that, and you know, when in Rome, you do as Romans do. They didn't use flashlights. You know, we're not having a camera. They believed that a camera or anything like that would scare anything away. So they preferred you didn't use it. So you can't get any evidence of it, but these things happen. And then same night, and this I can't explain this at all, but I'm not of the opinion that they're paranormal personally, okay? But they were talking about things that happened, and all you had to do was ask them. And I'm like, okay, well, let me try this, all right? So, when in Rome, do as Romans do. Said out loud, all right, if there's anything out there, because something already threw a stick at me, I hear things moving around in the bushes, just crazy stuff. And I said, if there's anything out there, give me a sign. Alex, I'm not kidding, man. It was like 10 seconds later, this huge tree, you hear every little fiber snapping, crack, 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 and this tree just falls, Now, I'm like, okay, that's weird, okay? So a couple of the other guys were kind of arguing back and forth. Oh, it's in the woods, trees fall in the woods. I said, well, okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's test it. So I said again, that was pretty good, but there seems to be a discrepancy whether anybody believes that was you or not. So if you're there, give me another sign. 30 seconds later, a tree falls on the other direction, the other way. Turns out that was a huge limb that fell out of a tree and hit the top of their house, right? This made we're like 150 yards away from the house, and we heard it really loud, but the people who were in the house that night, people who lived there, never heard a thing. They didn't hear it. I'm like, how is that even possible? So that was interesting. And they have good.
I was going to chime in, like the ladder is really interesting, and that's a really big point when you do a lot of investigations, is something violent will happen, and this happens a lot in poltergeist cases. Well, there'll be things flying around the room, or there'll be like the couch that gets thrown against the ground. Only certain people will hear it. You know, person in the room, somebody right next door won't hear anything. You know, it's something that we've encountered more than once. You know, and while we're in the field.
Sure.
So I just wanted to, bring that up. So, because there's poltergeist activity, right, on at the location.
Yeah, there's well, I guess I don't know about so much poltergeist activity, but paranormal, for sure.
Right.
There was a story that we were actually able to debunk this, but there was a story that a guy lived in this little house. The house is very decrepit now, falling apart. I mean, when we were walking around inside, I was like, okay, everybody spread out. Don't walk too close together because we'll fall to the floor, So it was a weird house, scary. And while we were in there, I left a recorder. We all left the house. Just to make a long story short, we all left the house, but I left a recorder sitting on the floor in the living room on top of a bag, actually. And everybody goes outside. We have this really crazy experience outside. We might want to save that one later. That's really cool. And so we had this crazy experience. Later on, when I get the recorder and I'm listening to the recording, there's like an old sofa in there that's kind of falling apart, but it sounded like it had moved like 6 inches. You hear something drag across the floor anyway, and I just assume it was sofa. I don't know. You hear something slide across, and then a voice, plain as day, said, "They're outside." Like nobody was even close to the house. It's just a great piece of evidence. And that's why we do it.
So what evidence from that location to you think is, what do you think is the best piece of evidence from that location? Or what stands out to you, as something that's like, whoa?
Sure. Well, okay. That exact same time, we had a couple different things happen at once, which was interesting. There was obviously that audio. There was also audio we captured that Ryan actually captured, which was really crazy. He was sleeping and had a recorder sitting out, and you hear doors, creak open and creak close, and he's asleep. He's dead asleep. You can hear him sleeping. He's not snoring, but you hear him sleeping. Just crazy stuff. And then, but at the time when we got that audio of something being slid, and you hear something say, just a whisper, but you hear it plain as day. We all were outside, actually following something that happened out there, which was, we went out there to continue the paranormal part outside of the house. When we were doing that, Dan Lindholm, who was with us as well, he said, "Hey, did you guys hear that?" I'm like, "No." He said something stood up in the weeds, turned and ran towards the woods, which is down this little hill, so kind of out of our view. And he said, he goes, "I heard it. I heard it stand up and turn and run." So we're like, okay, that's cool. So we get the night vision goggles out, and sure enough, there is a heat signature of something had kind of gone down the hill, turned, came across, and then back up the hill into a different location, and looked like it was like laying on its belly with its head just over the top of the hill. And we got a really good picture of that from the FLIR. And I actually took that to an artist friend of mine. His name's Montoya, Michael Montoya. And he actually did a drawing over top of the FLIR image. And there's no question what it is. And that's not me just assuming that's what it is. I mean, that's what it is. It's a head. It is a head. You can see eyes. You can see the nose. You can see it's like the hand is underneath. It's like this. It's sitting like this. It's just crazy. And then when we scanned back across, it was gone. So whatever it was left. So we go back the next day and look at that spot, and we were actually wrong. We thought that it was down the hill farther, and it was standing. Okay, from that night. The next day, once we got there, we started looking at it. Then we realized what had actually happened. It actually came back up the hill, so we were looking in the wrong place. But it was pretty cool. And that was my favorite piece of evidence from that trip. Besides Ryan's experience, which to me was a great experience, but to Ryan it was not. So I feel bad for him because of what he went through.
Yeah, so I'm going to let you tell a Ryan story, but for those out there, for the record, I've seen pretty much a lot of the evidence Ed is talking about, and it is pretty impressive. And Ryan is also another guy that we work with that I really trust 100%. And if he tells me something happened, right? So
yeah, class.
With mind, tell me the Ryan story real quick.
Well, we were staying in what they call a sugar shack, right, which is basically a shed, and it was supposedly the most active spot on the entire property. They've had people staying in there one night who saw a silhouette outside the window of a hand reach up and turn the light bulb and turn off the porch light. They've had things try to get in the door, just some crazy experiences before we ever got there. And one particular night, Ryan decided the homeowners had friends staying for a while, and when the friends were gone, they invited us to stay in the house if we wanted to. I didn't want to. I want to be down there where the action is personally, Well, Ryan, he was ready to go to the house. He's a great paranormal guy, not so much cryptid guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So he walks. We walk down to the sugar shack, and he grabs his phone and some other things, I guess a night bag or whatever. And it was funny because when and he said it's the only time I ever said it the entire time. But as he left, I said, "All right, man, be careful," And he says, "All right." So I just closed the door. For about 10 or 15 seconds, I heard what to me sounded like somebody just, hit a car alarm, like hit the horn, to turn on to lock your door or whatever, which in hindsight was kind of weird because we're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nobody's going to come break into anybody's car anyway, but that's what it sounded like. So I just assumed Ryan, as he left, just took out his keys and locked his car door. Thought nothing of it. He gets up to the house and he calls me and he says, "Hey, you got to come up to the house." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" He goes, No, you got to stay at the house tonight. Just get your stuff, come up here." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm fine." And he goes, No, seriously, man, you got to come up here. And I'm like, "No, I'm good." And he says, "Man, something just screamed at me." And I'm like, "Really? Cool. Awesome." I was excited for him. I didn't realize what it did to him, And so I stayed down there. Nothing happened the rest of the night. Nothing that I, caught anyway. And the next day, Ryan's telling me what happened. And when he left, he went out the door and got up on the driveway, which is all sand, by the way. And something from behind him on the other side of the sugar shack screamed at him. And he said it was like a hyena type scream, the way he describes it. And he said that it scared him so bad. He said he couldn't even come back and tell me because he thought for a second, should I go get Ed? No, I'll call him when I get to the house. You know what I mean? So we were kind of looking at his footprints the next day, and we can see when that happened because you see his in the sand. You see feet turn. You see the steps from the walking to the turn to the running. Everything he said is evident right there on the ground. All the evidence is there. So that was a pretty scary event for him, and I felt bad for him, because it did affect him, and I feel bad about that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot since then, with Ryan, and it's something that really, really affected him, And again, like he's a ghost guy. Spends a lot of time he's in the haunted houses, even on haunted trails, and he's fine, But it was kind of his first experience out in the woods, and Ed and I know as we've been out in the woods a lot, it's a very, very different experience when you don't have those four walls that protect those four walls,
Right.
And then so
it
can
be scary.
You and I are a little bit more used to it, but yeah, it could be kind of scary. So since we're talking scary, and this is going to be the main topic of today, you and I both have a pretty big interest in the Amityville Horror because it's a movie we saw as a kid. But I was a kid. You're a little bit older than me, right?
I don't know. I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming I'm a little older than you. So yeah. But I was still a kid. I was a kid when it happened. It happened in. Let's see, the murders took place in '74. I think they moved in '75 through the December and January of '76. And so the lots that is. And so yeah, it was. the book came out, I think, in '79, and I probably read the book in like '82. So that's kind of my that was my introduction to it. But I was completely engrossed in it. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I just had to visit the house, I had to, and it was cool.
So when did you go to the house? What year was it?
Oh man, I probably went to the house in probably right around 2000, maybe 98, 2000, something in that neighborhood. It's been a while. We got there. We didn't go in the house, unfortunately. We weren't able to get in the house, but we were standing. We were like those at the time, just those little gawkers, who want to go see. Oh man, I want to see this house, And but it was weird to actually stand outside this house after knowing so much about it, But while we were standing there, a car pulled up. Some people carried groceries in the house and closed the door. It was like, okay, it's good. Well, better than me, huh?
Yes. So the thing with Amityville is like there's two different stories, right? There's the murders, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. killed his family, and then there's the George Lutz, which is the family that moved in the house.
Right.
So we know
there's actually a third story that nobody knows about. Just so you know,
that's why you're here.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah, there's actually a story from before the murders that nobody really knows about. Like, for example, 6 months before the murders, Robert DeFeo Sr. actually went to Canada to get a priest to come and do an exorcism and bless the house, because they were having stuff. Then he thought his son was possessed 6 months before the murders, and other things were happening. So, and I just learned that. So I was thinking, wow, that's really cool. That's great tidbit information, So this isn't something that happened just when the Lutz moved in. You have the murders, which is a horrible, horrible event. And then, but even before that, so there, is there some truth to the voices made him do it? Maybe,
So for maybe people listening are not 100% familiar with the story, tell me a little bit about, the murder and what happened.
Yeah, it was November 13th. Robert DeFeo Jr. In the middle of the night, 3:15 a.m. by the way, and that's important later. But at 3:15 a.m., basically executed his entire family. And there's some interesting things. He shot every one of them. Every one of them was laying in bed, face down. The mother was the only one who was shot in the head. All the others were shot in the back. There was evidence that Dawn, who was the 18-year-old sister, could have been, we weren't sure, but could have been murdered somewhere else and put in bed. But there was nothing positive about that. But he shot everybody in bed with a .35 caliber rifle. I can't remember the name of the rifle, but it was loud.
Marlin. It was a Marlin. It's a Marlin deer hunting rifle. That's very loud, by the way.
Yes, Marlin. That's I couldn't remember, but for some reason, you would think. When they ran tests later, the shots were heard blocks away. Why? You have to wonder why. For number one, none of the neighbors heard any shots, and then number two, how do you shoot someone in bed and then go to another room and they're still asleep, so you shoot them. Then you go to another room, shoot them. Somebody had to have heard gunshots. You know what I mean? And there was no muzzle used. They were able to prove there was no muzzle used. So some crazy stuff. Who knows?
And yeah, also the hypothesis that they were drugged was actually false. The police ran an taxonomy on everybody that was shot, and there's no traces of drugs in their system whatsoever.
Yep. No sign of any drugs used to subdue. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking here. I'm a private investigator by trade too, so I didn't know if you knew that. But I'm just thinking of linking the facts here, and with that new piece of information, you're absolutely right with the sound. Like that's a huge, most important detail, because if they were awake, there's plenty of time for them to be startled and to get out of the house. Absolutely. So if the toxicity report came back negative, then that rules out the possibility of that. But then the evidence of how they were found is the fact. So with that new tip or that new piece of information with the paranormal possession type theory activity from the senior prior, what would your hypothesis be or your theory be if you were able to link those together with the same end result? Would that change? What do you think?
How
would you explain that if it was a factor?
No, and that's a great question. I mean, the fact that nobody heard the shots, even neighbors, there had to be, I don't know, a stormy night maybe, and I don't know, was it storming that night? I'm not even positive. I think in the movie it portrayed it as stormy, but I don't know that it was.
I don't believe that it was, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I haven't heard anything about it being stormy either, so I don't think so either. But I don't know unless they were all murdered in a different location and brought there, and maybe she was just the only one that they thought could have been put there. That's a great question, and I don't know.
Did anybody reopen the case? Because I'm thinking like forensic files and case files, things like that, because technology has changed. So you had to look at the time period, like analyzing forensics and DNA evidence and all that other stuff. Like they didn't have, for me in my career, I reopening cases is easy for me because, especially when I go to the past, because we have new tech now to prove a whole bunch of things that were missed. So do you think if a new age investigation in that place would maybe solve the riddle, or is it just a mystery forever?
Well, I think I don't think there will ever be an official reopening of the case because they got their guy. He admitted to doing it. In fact, his exact words were, when I started, I couldn't stop. It happened so fast, so he admitted to doing it. I mean, he did change his story a lot of times, things like that. But the bottom line is he did it. And how he did it is probably not as important. We want to know. I mean, it's curiosity-wise, we want to know. But the fact that he did it is more important than how he did it. So I don't think there would ever be an official reopening case. But there's been, I'm sure, a plethora of investigators that have looked into the evidence and different things, and just to see, And
has anybody I was going to say, has anybody done a criminology report on him, to kind of figure out why he, the mental health behind his?
He was actually he was interviewed even at time by psychologists because the defense was that the voice didn't do it and he was trying to plead insanity, and it's weird because his attorney gets a psychologist who says, this guy probably was watching it from outside of his own body, so he wasn't aware of what he was doing. The other psychologist said, oh, he was definitely aware. So there was, I guess it depends on what you're buying. You know how those things go. You buy a good witness.
Right. So to tie that into possession and paranormal activity. So, do you think, again, that's a psychogenic thing of the mind. We'll never be able to know until we're in its head in the moment. But with that paranormal suspicion prior, that new piece of information that you shared today, that would probably, in my opinion, strengthen the possibility of him being possessed.
Sure. And I think that's a great piece of evidence if there was any, So when I heard it, I know that if on a personal level, it kind of made me think, okay, now there's a little more to it. There, in fact, in the front yard when the DeFeos lived there was a fountain. You only ever see a picture of the fountain with the angel in the fountain, ceramic, really tall, big fountain.
I think
that was Robert DeFeo Sr. actually bought that as a way to ward off these evil things that are happening in the house already, so that was and these are things that no one's ever really talked about, and I think it's kind of cool, and it does lead to at least the possibility that let me back up for just a second. Right, when something takes a hold of somebody and it changes their personality, there's a history of that. Okay, so meaning that in that same spot, there's Robert DeFeo Jr. possibly manipulated his personality into being what he was, and then George Lutz moves in. There's a strong history of him and his personality changes, so there is a history, And then you even go back farther in that location, and in that location you have a spot where Native Americans used to keep prisoners of war, and they were tortured. Things in that exact spot, right on the Amityville River. I mean, there's a history of that location being bad. It's not just the murders, which is horrible, but there were probably many people killed there in that same spot way before. So
anyone know the history on the land?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that piece of land was used as a look at that spot was used as a from my understanding, it was like a Native American like prison, basically, where they kept prisoners of their own wars, and they were torturing people and killing them. I mean, in that same spot, obviously years before. I think there was one of the original homeowners, I believe, she died in the house, not that house, in that a house built in the same spot. There was another house built there before, which was obviously torn down and built up when the whole neighborhood came up. But so there's been a history of death in that location, and some of it was very violent, besides the DeFeo murders.
See, this is the main reason I wanted to have Ed on for this show. It's because we don't focus enough on the DeFeo murder side of the story, which I've always felt is really important because it leads into everything else, Sure. And this is something, for whatever reason, people don't focus on because it's not as exciting, and there's not a whole lot of paranormal aspects to it, aside from what we just mentioned. And Ed and I have talked about this, and there is, but people don't know about it, So
right.
This is,
this
is why I wanted to focus on that.
And I didn't mean to interrupt or take over, but it's new to me. I haven't heard that.
No, this is where we were heading anyway. So I'm glad you stepped in, because that's what I wanted to cover with Ed. So
perfect. So I'm gonna put a pause right there because I got to read my little thing here for commercials. Okay, so we're gonna continue after a message from our professional partners. Also, remember, you are listening to this live on KPNL Radio. If you're listening to this live on KPNL Radio or a future podcast, head over to youtube.com/The Experiencers Support Association so you can see the video that's going with the audio. Remember, you are listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencers Support Association. And for the record, Rush is the best rock band ever.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis, and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that we're alone in the universe.
My mission is to assist and help those experiencing this phenomenon in such a way that they're able to continue and live with it, and also in a way that it can be measured, quantified, and reinforced within today's society, so that way it can be accepted and no longer viewed in a negative way. One thing that I do value in people is the ability to sense and feel when something is right and when something is wrong. That is a natural ability that we all share. Now, when we combine that with the paranormal and ufological abductions or visits, I have this sensation that these abilities are connected. Not everyone can sense, not everyone can feel. However, those who can be connected with something that we cannot explain. And part of my research, it's not just to investigate the experience, but it's also to understand and study the experiencer to find out what they have in common with other experiencers, to try to figure out what the actual makeup is in order to be on that spectrum. There's a lot of it happening all over the world, and I do not know of any other study that is focusing on the individuals as people, only the phenomenon.
Okay, welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. If you're enjoying this episode so far, head over to patreon.com/The Experiencer Support Association here for only $7 a month. Your membership will get you at least an extra half hour of this conversation, along with a bunch of other perks for becoming an insider. Also, if you have experienced an unexplained event involving the paranormal, extraterrestrials, dogman, or any other paracryptid, head over to tessacan.org/reporting system, all one word. The more reports we get, the more we will understand this phenomenon and how it affects our people. Let the others who have already reported be that example that proves we are making a difference. If it wasn't for these reports, we would not be able to do what we do, and for that, we thank you. So let's dive into the comments and questions. So if you guys have any questions, ask them now, and we will get our guests to answer them. So hello, Chantel. Hello, Lisa. Hello, KPNL Radio. Hello, Tim Morrison. Tim, the demon guy in the house. Hello, MS Mom. Hello, Brown Beard. I think that's Alex. And where's the first question? Let me see here. Hello, Facebook users. Head over to YouTube if you want us to talk to you. And okay, SM. Hello, SM. He says, or he or she says, when I was a kid, I used to sit at my grandparents' table and watch glowing man-like figures run on the window. Years later, I told my grandpa, and his jaw dropped, and he told me he saw them too. You guys have any comment on that?
I think it's a great thing to experience. You know, I mean, anytime you can see or experience anything, you know, because Alex and I mean, I'm sure Alex will vouch here. We go, 20 times, and you see something once. You know, it takes a long time to have any experiences at all that you can classify as either paranormal or cryptid or UFO, whatever it is. And so congratulations. It's great.
So hello, Scarborough Sasquatch Station. Sorry, Alex, were you going to say something? Alex, your mic's off, eh?
The part people don't realize, because there's this television shows and they see something every show, but like Ed and I, and but I don't mean just together, but individually. We've all been in this field for many, many years. It's a lot of hours. We've been fortunate that we've seen a lot of things. We've been fortunate because we also do our homework. We know where to go. We know how to operate. But it's a lot of hours where you're just looking at a tree in the dark,
Absolutely.
or looking at a wall in the dark,
Yeah, Brownbeard had said to that too. Your senses are heightened in the dark. You hear more clearly and you smell better.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
And then Chantel had said earlier, I feel like ghost or spirit are easier to accept than cryptids and stuff. How do you feel about that?
Sorry?
It says, I feel like Oh, sorry. It's okay. The question was, the statement was, I feel like ghosts or spirit are easier to accept than cryptids and stuff. How do you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's you're exactly right. I mean, you look at the I don't know, I guess for lack of better words, the size of audience in each genre. You know, Bigfooting or cryptid is a very, very small audience. Then you get into ufology, it's a little bigger. Then you get into paranormal, and it's huge. You know, and it's because more people have you can sit at home and feel ghosts or have a paranormal experience or think you are. You know, in order to have a cryptid experience, you actually have to go out, and not as many people go out looking as, you know, you generally don't see Bigfoot in your living room. You see a ghost, you know. So yeah, there's definitely a much larger audience in paranormal than there is in cryptid or ufology or anything else. Is that right, Alex? Is that how you would put that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, millions of people around the world throughout history have recorded encounters with ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call them, you know, versus there's a lot of cryptozoology. A lot of people have seen Bigfoots, I mean, all over the world, right? From medieval Europe, we used to call the wild man, to even on, you know, cave paintings and all that. But it's much rarer. And there's a lot more misconceptions about what cryptozoology is, what cryptids are versus what ghosts are. And, you know, the thing is, if you're going to go out in the woods, you have to go pretty deep in the woods. You know, if you want to, you have to have a certain amount of skills in wildlife. You have to know what a bear track looks like. There's a little more knowledge behind it. There's a little more methodology. There's a little more, you know, there's a little more education behind how to function and how to see something in the wild, you know? So it's not, it takes a little bit more work. It's, you know, it's a little more expensive. And you risk your life a lot of the times. You're exposed to the elements, to the wildlife. It's tough, you know? So there's a lot less sightings. Therefore, people hear about it much less, and there's a lot less interest.
Sure. And I think one good way to put that is when you're looking at paranormal, the ghosts visit your house. When you're looking at kids, you have to visit their house, you know? So, and, you know, it's a totally different ballgame. Totally different ballgame.
And it's weird because there's a lot more of a stigma, too, associated with, let's say, Bigfoot versus things that are paranormal. And I'll give you a perfect example. I was doing a couple independent studies for the University of Illinois at Chicago when I was an undergrad, and that just means basically just not taking any classes, just doing research and writing a long paper. And I did pretty well at school, so the head guy there is like, look, man, I'll let you do whatever you want. Anything, it's done, you've got your A, you know? And I said, Bigfoot. He's like, no, anything but that. I'm like, zombies. He's like, do it, done. So even zombies turn out to be, you know, more accessible to people than Bigfoot.
And Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Okay. Chantel had said, Amityville, the movies are all scary. Do you have an experience there that was similar to a scene in the films?
Have I ever had an experience that would be similar as what's in the films?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
I think so, yeah.
I would say I did have actually a pretty scary experience one time. It wasn't obviously at that house, but if it means anywhere, I was actually in my own living room, and this is I have to set this up. Just take 1 second though, but it doesn't make any sense if I don't. We lived in a house in California, and the next door neighbor, and Alex has been there, but Alex has been at the house. The house next door was just the spookiest place. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that place is haunted, right? No question. You can feel it just driving down the street. It's crazy. So I'm standing in the living room. I'm actually getting ready to go do something, and I was kind of stopped because I was watching something on television, and my attention's on the TV. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, and I looked over, and there was a figure like this, and I can only see like this much of it. But it was the head, the shoulder, the arm. You know, I saw it. It was just completely gray, like almost like a cloud. You know, but it had shape, and I'm thinking, holy cow, somebody's looking in my house. You know, and I go out the back door, which is right there. I open the door, and there's a deck, and the deck's up high. Right, Alex, you've been there. Nothing was there. There's nothing. Nothing could have just jumped over. It was too far of a drop. I mean, whatever it was gone. And that was a pretty scary event. And I'm like, man, you know,